So I guess I'll kind of explain why I'm here. So, I live in Kentucky now, but I grew up here. And I'm back here because next week is 2 years since my dad passed away. Before you guys get concerned, there are jokes here. And let me explain. So my dad was such a good storyteller, and he was such a good joke teller. He literally was in the hospital telling jokes at one point to a group of nurses and had a heart attack. And thank God he was telling the jokes because they were able to resuscitate him in that time. And most comedians talk about, if your jokes are good, that you kill. But his jokes were too good, he almost killed himself. That's... And I have to tell people, I was thinking about this and reflecting on this when Libba asked me to do it, because, a lot of my humor can be pretty deadpan, pretty dark at times. But I realized, we all experience grief, right? But we go through it differently. It's unique to all of us, right? And, for me, because my dad was always, great at telling jokes, he was great at making people laugh, that's something he loved. It's this is sort of my way of being closer to him and to share in something that we both really love to do together, which was to make others laugh, right? So this is the story of my dad passing. And, my dad, he'd been sick for a while. And so, we planned on the expenses, the funeral, all of that. The one thing that we didn't plan on was what to do with his 40-year-old porn collection. And I say porn collection, but really it's more like a pornucopia. Because Dad, he didn't buy Hustler, he didn't buy Playboy. No, Dad went online and he printed off single images onto sheets of paper and then stored them in file boxes. And my mom, God love her, she's a good Catholic woman, and she was mortified, and she's like, I can't have people knowing that this is in my house. Unfortunately for her, I travel around the country telling this joke, so now everyone knows that it was in her house. But I come back home, and she's like, you gotta help me get rid of this. And so I was like, all right, we'll figure something out, we'll destroy it. And she comes out with 3 large file boxes just filled to the brim with sheets of porn. And I looked down and I said, my God, no wonder there was never any ink in the printer. I had to get up early and print off my homework every day at school because Dad was too busy printing off porn like we were Kinkos. And my friends asked me, they're like, did he at least print in black and white? And I said, no, that man printed full color, full bush. It turns out full bush eats up a lot of toner. So, I looked at my mom, I was like, what are we gonna do with this? And she's like, well, let's start by shredding it. Start shredding it, quickly break the shredder. Turns out what we did to it isn't covered under any warranty. And then so, I looked at her, I said, all right, why don't we burn it, right? We'll put it in the fire. She said, absolutely not. It's gonna make a lot of smoke. I said, okay, let's put it in the recycling bin. She said, absolutely not. What if a strong wind comes by, knocks over the recycling bin, all the porn spills out, and now all the neighbors know that we have all this porn? I was like, it's a bit dramatic, but I see your point. She said, I want you to go around to all the other neighbors' houses in the middle of the night and put the porn in their recycling bins. To which I said, absolutely not. That's the kind of thing where if I get caught, suddenly, I'm not allowed within 500 yards of a school. And so, we settled on going to the recycling center, which turns out to be the Charlotte dump. That's something I didn't know until then. And we grabbed the porn, we loaded up into her Subaru. Make of that what you will. She does have a really good friend named Susan. And they're going to Paris this summer. I don't know, should I be worried? No, that's fine. It's fine. But we load up all the porn, we go to the dump, and I get out, I'm holding all 3 file boxes, and Mom looks at me and she's like, do you think anybody works here? I said, surely not, this is the dump. And as soon as I say that, a man driving a golf cart wearing cargo shorts pulls up and says, can I help you? And my mom just takes off. And she just leaves me there holding all 3 file boxes. And I said, paper? He said, you're gonna have to recycle that there, but you're gonna have to recycle the cardboard over there. I said, of course. So I start unloading everything slowly, Finally, Mom drives back over, and she looks at me and she says, "Should we say some words?" And I said, "Over the porn?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." "Bless us, O Lord, in this thy porn, which we are about to destroy. And dear God, can you please see to it that Scott's heavenly printer never jams, and may his cartridges runneth over." So we end up destroying the porn, fortunately. And the next thing that we didn't really plan on, that we didn't know was going to be a problem, was our phone company. And I don't want to call out my phone company, but I can tell you their initials start with AT&T. They found out that he'd passed, and so they decided to shut off the phone service because he was the head account holder. And so I called them, and I was talking to them for several hours, and turns out I wasn't talking to the best and the brightest, because after about 3 hours of explaining the situation, the woman said to me, "Well, he's going to have to come down here and sign over the account himself." To which I said, "Okay, Mom, get Dad." So grabbed the urn, got in the Subaru, placed the urn on the counter of the AT&T store, and I said, "Here's Scott Kremers to sign over the account." And they looked at me and said, "Oh my God, I am so sorry. Listen, all you have to do, go home, print off a death certificate. We'll take care of this whole thing." Go home, go to print off the death certificate, and wouldn't you know, printer's still out of ink. Thank you all so much. That has been my story, my time. Thank you again to Libba. And I guess, in the words of my dad, thinking about like him inspiring me to, tell stories and tell jokes, I can say this because I know it's a hard time for everybody, and what gets me out of bed is just making people laugh and, trying to get through the day. I can say, in the words of Scott Kremers, be loud, be proud, and don't let the effers get you down. So thank you all so much. Have a great night. Thank you, Kate.